Good evening and welcome. I'm Sheila Balgobin and I am the Dream Decipherer, and I help you to crack the code of your sleeping dreams so you can sleep sound and dream deep. This evening I have two short dreams. They are dreamt in close proximity to one another, so we'll have to see how they're related, but they feature champagne bottles, and three dads. So we'll start with dream one. And the dreamer reports that he was with someone at an event, and this person was opening a bottle of very expensive champagne, but it was an unusual champagne bottle. Instead of having a cork, it was completely sealed, um, a, a completely sealed glass bottle, which the dreamer guessed that it was probably not designed to be opened. But the companion of the dreamer, opened the bottle by smashing it, smashing the neck of it, which of course shattered the glass and turned the champagne into a rather dangerous cocktail, described as a slush puppy made of champagne and glass. And that's the end of the first dream, of undrinkable champagne. The second dream features the dreamer walking on a narrow path by the sea with his baby son in his arms. While walking, the dreamer encountered a young man who was with his father, and the father, for whatever reason, pushed ahead of the dreamer. And when the dreamer commented on the fact, this man, turned around and started shouting abuse at the dreamer. At that point, um, the dreamer's father is handed the baby, and the dreamer gets ready to get into a fight, and the dream ends there. He doesn't actually fight in the dream. Now, what on earth relates unopened champagne bottles, or undrinkable champagne, and this tale of three dads? And we'll find out as we go along, see what the relationship is between the dreams, because as always, when dreams are dreamt in close proximity to each other, either in the same night or in a succession of nights, they're usually related in some way. So let's take a look at the first dream. The first dream, the dreamer reports that he was at an event. What kind of event was it? Was it just a birthday? Was it an anniversary? What kind of event was it? Is that known to the dreamer? Um, but we would usually associate champagne, particularly expensive champagne, with some kind of celebration. So, what exactly was being celebrated at this event? Now, going back to the champagne for a second, what does expensive champagne? And the point was made that it wasn't just cheap champagne; it was good champagne. So, what does the dreamer associate with um, expensive champagne? What does that mean for the dreamer? What occasions are this kind of champagne warranted? Now, this champagne bottle was unusual in that it had no cork and it was made of one piece of glass, including the neck of the bottle. So there was no way to open the bottle except by smashing it. And a funny thought came to me when I read this, was that, like, they say that to make an omelet, you have to break eggs. In other words, in order for something new to happen, something old has to give way, something has to break. So I just wonder, if there's something about things being bottled up, maybe feelings being bottled up for the dreamer. But another term that came to me when I read this was that this bottle was completely sealed. There was no way to get into it. what we would call hermetically sealed, which comes from ancient alchemy, which meant that Mercury kept things like unruly emotions inside a bottle that couldn't be opened. So it was hermetically sealed by the god Hermes. But in psychological terms, the being hermetically sealed is you're talking about emotions. That Jung talks about the therapist being the container that holds the psyche of the person that's they're seeing until they become strong enough to carry their own stuff. And I just wonder if this bottle represents for the dreamer, especially since it contains liquid, is representative of his unconscious feelings or unacknowledged feelings anyway. And there's perhaps the suggestion here that the contents of this bottle, whatever it contains, must remain um, concealed, or rather must remain contained or enclosed in order to continue to be viable. Otherwise, to open it is to render it completely useless and even harmful, since the dreamer talks about a slush puppy made of champagne and glass. Not doesn't sound too nice to drink, does it? So I put to the dreamer that perhaps that there are some contents, emotional contents, that can't be opened up for some reason, for fear of breaking and spoiling the container, whether that be the dreamer himself or a particular situation. But there seems to be the implication that you have to let sleeping dogs lie in this particular case or create problems. Now, moving on to the second dream, the dreamer reports that he's walking on a narrow path by the sea. And once again, you're talking about fluid, about liquid, and the sea is how often the unconscious mind is referred to. That the conscious part of us, the part that says I and recognizes itself as being an individual, is a little teeny cork that bobs on the ocean of our unconscious. So our unconscious is huge and vast and with great depth as compared to our conscious mind, which can only take in so much information at one time. So again, there's this notion of fluid, of liquid, that seems to connect with the first dream. Now, the baby that the dreamer was holding in this second dream is interesting because it could literally be a child and his child in waking life, but I suspect that because of this theme of the sea, and perhaps pointing to the unconscious mind, that this baby represents um, undeveloped or even unknown parts of the dreamer that he's carrying around. It could also be a reflection of the inner child, that there's something going on that the inner child needs to be held and carried around, perhaps because it's wounded. Now, on this path, the dreamer who's walking along with his infant child in his arms, and interestingly enough, his dad, who we don't know is even there until the end of the dream. Now, there was another man with his son, who was an older child, walking on the same path and pushed past, apparently, the dreamer. Once the dreamer kind of remarked on it, he got a whole lot of abuse from the man who pushed past him. And that's when he decided, it was time to like stand up and be counted, and handed his son off to his dad, to the grandfather, and got ready to get into it with this man. That didn't happen though, which is interesting in and of itself. But we'll come back to that. Now, the how did the what was feelings were stirred by this man pushing past the dreamer? I wonder. Was he angry? Was he frustrated? Was he nervous because he was near the sea with his child and didn't want to, obviously, to slip and fall? What was running through the dreamer's mind, or what emotions came up with regard to this man? First of all, pushing past him, and then when the dreamer makes a remark, starts to get a whole lot of a lip from him about it. So what was going on there? Now, what was the dad, the dreamer's father, was also present. And so there were three dads there. Though the third one, the granddad who ended up holding the baby, was almost an invisible presence until this impending fight started to brew. And I just wonder if perhaps in waking life there is some issue that the dreamer may have with their parent or parents, and with regard to their presence or lack thereof. So there's something about being there and not being there, because if you read the first part of the dream, you wouldn't even know the dad was there. It wasn't until it was when a tight spot occurred that the dad kind of appeared to kind of save the day, so to speak. Now, the dream actually ended before the dreamer actually got into any kind of physical altercation with this man who was with his own son. And I just wonder how the dreamer felt about that. Was he frustrated? Did he wake up frustrated or kind of just pumped up, ready to get into a fight? And the adrenaline going, but no place to put it because the action wasn't completed. And there's something about, perhaps, about displaced frustration, perhaps, that may be indicated in this particular dream. So, what actually links these two dreams? Well, I think that the first thing that links them is that there was things that were spoiled in some way. The champagne becoming undrinkable because it was broken open rather than some other way of opening it. It was just literally smashed and opened, making it undrinkable. The dreamer was by the sea, walking in a narrow path by the sea. And again, the sea represents the unconscious, perhaps representing something to the dreamer that the dreamer is not dealing with or doesn't want to deal with, but kind of lets it lie until something disturbs it. And then there has to be a break or some kind of physical act in order to change things. Now, there was a kind of good dad, bad dad going on here. You had the good dad holding his baby and being careful with it. And then you have the other dad with an older son who's a little less careful, a little less conscientious, and certainly a bit more rude in terms of his behavior. And I wonder if there's a conflict there of between good dad and bad dad. Sometimes as parents, we may have to play the bad guy in order to correct our children and to teach them, right from wrong. And I just wonder if there's something of that in there, perhaps a conflict between being the kind of dad that takes action and will discipline, and the one who kind of is more relaxed and laid back. But there's certainly something around the issue of fathers and fatherhood that perhaps that may be worthwhile for the dreamer to look at. Now, I also think that there's a connection between this celebration of some unknown event, and the dreamer actually carrying this baby in his arms, like a christening or something, like um, kind of bringing a child into a community, if you will, whether it be religious or otherwise, but celebrating the child's arrival into a community. And I wonder if that may be something that resonates for the dreamer, whether in as part of this dream or in actual waking life. So there you have it. We have the unconscious, I think, making its its presence known in an interesting way because of being in a hermetically sealed container that needs to be broken in order for the contents to come out. Um, but it could get messy when it happens. And acting on impulse. There's something about spontaneous action here, whether it be to open an unopenable bottle or to confront somebody about their behavior. And perhaps there's something there about confronting people and behavior, about or confronting others about their behavior that may be an issue for the dreamer to look at. So there you have it. Two little dreams, but related despite their very disparate subjects. By indicating that there's some unacknowledged or even unknown emotions that the dreamer may need to address in order to move out of a particular situation they may be facing in waking life. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Have a great evening and rest of the week. Drink plenty of fluids. It's supposed to be hot over the next few days, close to 100 degrees, I understand, at one point. So take care and enjoy yourself, but be safe. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.